Oh my gosh, have you been to Marshall's lately? They have all the brand name and designer pieces you love, but without the jaw-dropping price tags. All right, so here's the truth. You should never have to compromise between quality and price. And at Marshall's, you don't have to. Marshall's believes everyone deserves access to the good stuff. And that's why their buyers hustle around the clock to make it happen for you. Visit a Marshall's store near you or shop online at marshalls.com.
Save big during Labor Day at Lowe's. Get up to 40% off select major appliances. Plus, buy more to get up to an additional 20% off. Shop even more savings with 3 Stay Green 1 cubic foot vegetable and flower garden soil bags for $10. This Labor Day, take care of your home for less at Lowe's. We help, you save. Valid through 9/3. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Selection varies by location. Select locations only. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details.
Everything from clothing to household items are getting more expensive each day. The world of fast fashion has complicated clothing production by shipping cheap parts around the world to whoever can sew them the cheapest. And now you, the consumer, are paying the price with rising costs. American Giant is about keeping things simple and close to home. They aren't affected by tariffs because their products never leave the U.S. Skip the tariff and snag yourself American-made clothing with American Giant. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code STAPLE20 at American-Giant.com. That's 20% off when you use code STAPLE20 at American-Giant.com.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
This is the CRM Archaeology Podcast. It's the show where we pull back the veil of cultural resources management archaeology and discuss the issues that everyone is concerned about. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 317. And today we're going to be talking about a day in archaeology, just going through each one of our experiences from a day in the life of. But this is inspired by a recent, I don't know what you call it. It's the Council for British Archaeology, a day in archaeology. But I'm going to let Doug explain it a little bit better. We're a little late to the game, but, better late than never.
Yeah. So a day in archaeology actually started. So this is it's so old that actually it originally started mainly as blogs. So it was a blog. It was several archaeologists put together just by themselves. It was big on Twitter back when Twitter was Twitter. And we're actually talking started probably about 15 years or so ago. And it originally somewhat UK based. And then it expanded out. So at one time they had Jaime in Spain. So there was Spanish language versions of this. And it was basically sort of started as a blogging carnival where different bloggers would basically go and post all on the same day. Hey, this is my day today. This is what's like in archaeology. I'm pretty sure I think at one point, one year, it was several hundred, maybe close to 500 or 600 contributions. There was a website. It was quite big. It's slightly shrunk down to the people who started it. Lives happen, other things. It was all volunteer. And so Council for British Archaeology has sort of taken it over, and they launch it as part of their Festival of Archaeology, which is a fortnight of, sorry, not to get sidetracked on a whole other thing. That was a split off.
Fortnight.
Yeah, no. It's
Doug, make sure you throw in the word whilst. Just once, at least once while you're talking.
Yeah, well, I can. Whilst it used to be part of a bigger thing called European Heritage Days and aligned with Scottish Archaeology Month, it's now its own separate sort of thing that happens in the summer. We are recording this after the fact because we were just a little late to the party, didn't get our act together. But for today's episode, we're going to do our contribution to the day in archaeology. And each one of us are going to sort of take a turn for a segment and talk about what we do, because we're pretty sure, well, one, this will be interesting for us as hosts to find out what our other hosts actually do. And I think it'll probably be interesting to our listeners as well, because I'm pretty sure we have fairly different jobs careers. I don't know what you want to call it, but like, I don't think there's actually a lot of overlap in what we do. So,
Agreed.
yeah, that's going to be this week's episode. And I think, did Andrew draw the short straw and has to go first?
I did. I am currently the owner of the short straw. And just to translate for the rest of the world, a fortnight is 2 weeks. A fortnight is 2 weeks. So
it's a video game, I'm pretty sure.
That's right. That's right. And the British just have to wait for us. Sorry, British. Yeah. So yeah, I really like this idea, actually, about talking about day in the life, because while I go through mine, I am genuinely curious about my other two co-hosts and what they're doing. We record these things, every 2 weeks, right? But we rarely really dive into what we're actually doing, day by day. So I'm curious about what's coming up. So for me, what's funny is this hits at a really interesting time, just in terms of a lot going on for me, because we are here in kind of mid-August, and that means that college starts again. So this is week one, actually, for our college and for colleges on the semester system. This is about when everything starts. So it's a lot of work behind the scenes. Sometimes people will say like, oh, college professors, they don't do anything. What kind of job do they have? And I don't mind that joke. But then every so often, like now, I have a full-time job here. Like, I'm doing a lot of work here. I would even say throughout this past summer, my joke is like, my plants in my office never die. And what I mean by that is I'm there every week to water my plants in some form, So just getting school ready, getting all that, like anything from Xeroxing everything to opening various Canvas or online shells or recording things, or even getting ready, even though it's something you've talked about lots of times, you just want to make sure it's like kind of clean and updated and ready. It's a full-time gig. And I will say I really enjoy it. So I'm happy with my day. And actually, as we talk about a day in the life, I'm cheating a little. It's really like a week in the life, because I have several things that have happened over the past week. So starting all my school stuff, doing my professoring. Oh, and I do have to say, too, that I don't have TAs. Like, I don't have teaching assistants or anything like that, right? I do all of it myself. But behind the scenes, not only is there being a college professor, but I would say when you are a college professor in archaeology, and especially if you've been there for a while, you kind of have this like dark web of a lot of other archaeologists who are connected to you. So behind the scenes, I get like questions. Like sometimes they're really, really worried. And this isn't just from students. This is like colleagues. They'll call me and they'll be like, hey, Kinkella, can you talk for a minute? And they'll tell me some like crazy thing that's going on, either in the world of CRM, the world of academia. You guys, I've gotten all of them. It's like, I know this cliche has been done to death, but I do know where all the bodies are buried. It's weird. And they'll come to me and they'll want my 2 cents on a thing. This is also crazy. And I hope everyone listening to this has this experience at some point where you're like, oh my God, I'm the guy, like you're like the one, you're like, oh my God, I'm the one people are coming to. I'm the mystic on the mountaintop. It's weird. Like when you realize that's it and you're like, oh my God, I better say something like not stupid, take it seriously.
Yeah. It's sobering, but at the same time, yeah, it's nice. It's nice. It's not just for like the ego part of it. It's nice because you feel like you can actually contribute something
exactly
outside of your own little world. Yeah.
It's sobering and it's an honor at the same in the same moment. You're like, wow, they really care what I say, and so you have to sort of take the reins. So, and unfortunately, the specifics of some of the stuff I can't tell you guys, because it's like it's sensitive. So, and just talking about this now, I'm just realizing it. I'm like, man, this has happened a lot. So I have that to ponder. That's the kind of stuff that sometimes keeps me up nights. I'm like, oh man, hope I'm telling them the right thing. Ooh, that's a tough problem. I'm also part of the VCAS, the Ventura County Archaeological Society. And that, even though it's like a little nonprofit archaeology group, there's things every month, just the upkeep of that kind of stuff. When you're a sort of a professional part of a group like that, a lot of stuff falls in your lap. The stuff that's labeled, well, somebody's got to do it. You know what I mean? It's like you're the somebody. You're like, oh, wait. Oh, we got to make sure to pay our insurance. Oh, wait, we got to make sure that the storage is okay. Oh, we got to, you're right. You guys, I think, get what I mean. So that's always bubbling in the back. Also, in terms of my sort of day in the life, I have this connection to UC Santa Barbara, where I'm legally, I guess you could say, I'm a research associate. So I have my little card that says research associate. And what that means is I work in one of the labs there doing archaeology. And it's with an old professor of mine. I originally got into this. So that's really fun. But there's stuff there, too, when you're a research associate, when you have some sort of position, even though it's unpaid. You have to make sure that that's up to date. Like over the summer, my research associateness was dropped because it was a bureaucratic thing, and so I've had to re-up. I've had to become a real person again in the eyes of UCSB. So I was doing that. I think you guys know how. Here's the intrepid world of the archaeologist sitting online, trying to fill out bureaucratic paperwork, trying to get their research associate thing redone, re-upped. There I am, just like Indiana Jones. That's what I was doing this last week. I was dealing with my YouTube channel stuff. So like reaching out in terms of, social media or whatever it is. I'd realized I've played my YouTube fame completely wrong in a lot of ways because I don't do what everybody says to do. I don't really take it too seriously. I don't capitalize on things. I don't really make clickbait titles, and I don't stay on it. I have almost, I think, 7,000 subscribers at this point, and I'm sure I would have way more if I kind of followed the rules. There'll be months where I don't record anything, and that's really bad. Of course, you fall off the algorithm or whatever, but I sort of made a note to myself where I was like, I gotta record something at least every 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Because I like it. I really like doing the YouTube thing. I let it go. How we all do, we let things that we like go when there's other things that you like have to do, So that's one thing in my day of the life. I'm always trying to figure out topics for the Pseudo Archaeology podcast, the other podcast that I do. Right. I'm always like, oh my God. And I have the same worries that we do here of like, oh my God, I got to record this thing. Oh my God, I'm late. Oh, wait, did I record that right? Oh, wait, did I cut that part off? Huh? Yeah, totally right. Did I do the show notes, all the background stuff? Did I did I say that twice? Did I say that wrong? It's extra hard for me because I'm doing mine alone, where at least there's the three of us here. So like when I'm alone, I'll literally be like, oh my God, wait, did I already say that? Am I just re-saying something I said 6 minutes ago? Oh shit. So that was something in my day. And then there's also, I do some like TV stuff every so often. I have an agent through Past Preservers, and so I'm a talking head once in a long while on like things on the Discovery Channel or the History Channel or whatever. I have found that I really like doing that, but this summer's been pretty quiet. I know you're like, yeah, Kinkella, take the note. They don't like you anymore, but I think it's actually a industry-wide thing. Unfortunately, it feels to me like sort of the Hollywood system is going through a tough time right now where they're not doing so much, and I think my other friends in that world are suffering a little bit.
What's the sort of stuff that you end up like? What sort of Actually, I'll throw it out there. What is these sort of shows that you end up doing?
So there's been a bunch of them over time. Like this is another thing I was looking at last week, kind of going like, wow, I've done quite a few of these. It's typically it'll be like an 8-show run of something. It'll be called something like Mysteries in the Ice or Mysteries in the Jungle, or it'll have some theme. And then they'll like look at like famous archaeology sites or famous, this kind of stuff. And so they bring me in as I'm called an expert presenter. and they bring me in with a handful of other people. We've all seen these. We've all seen these shows where there's like a narrator being like, and thus the mummies were pulled from the sands of Egypt. Like there's that narrator, but then they cut to like the talking head. And I'm one of the talking heads where I'll be like, well, the classic Maya ran from 800 AD, that kind of thing. So
is
that's
it usually
how these
focused on Maya stuff? Is that what you typically? No. So it can be all sorts of. Got it.
It's very, I have a lot of respect. I've ended up having a lot of respect for the production companies who make this stuff, because if you're too much of sort of like a stick up your ass academic, you'll be like, well, I can't believe they didn't talk about my research. Oh, I can't believe they said that. That is so 2017. Oh, you can knock that stuff, but you're like, you're not the audience, asshole. It's like, it's for the general public. So I've always been really proud of the stuff I've been a part of, and just the crew who does that, because writing that stuff, even just selling a show like that, is so tough. They're constantly rewriting, constantly working on it, So what's funny is there's been times when they'll do a segment on like Maya cenotes and not interview me, the Maya cenote guy. It's so funny. And I'll joke with them. I'm like, guys, some of the material you gave to that person who you interviewed is like my stuff. Maybe you should interview me, but it's no harm, no foul, because you just, it's whatever works with them. It's whoever looks right, whoever's doing the right thing. So I've talked about stuff I don't know that much about, whereas other times, there's stuff I know a ton about that I don't talk about.
You totally ruined my setup. I was going to be like, because I vaguely remember back from our resume episode, where was it like Pay Commander or something like that, who is yours? I was like, isn't your research area like Mayan cenotes? And like, you haven't even mentioned that at all yet in like your day of your life. Do you? Because I know community college, you don't. I know we can see this because we're on a podcast. I'm doing air quotes, but you don't have to do research, which I'm pretty sure you still have to. You just don't get paid for it, and you don't get any time off at any point. But we're actually, I think your school year has started by the time we recorded this. But like, a couple of weeks ago, don't you like spend a couple of weeks in Belize or something? Or no? What do you do with that?
That's actually a great question. It's so. The cenotes thing, even though I always joke that will be chiseled on my tombstone. Here lies Andrew Kinkella, cenote guy. I haven't directly dove in the cenotes in like 7 or 8 years or something like that. And that's not, I had just done so much of that stuff, and I'm sure it'll come back around. As you guys know, behind the scenes in archaeology, it depends on the project. It depends on the funding. It depends on where it's going. The overall project I was a part of just isn't doing the cenote stuff so much at this point, which is fine. But so what's funny is, I haven't done the cenote stuff in a while, but I'm still working in the Maya area on Maya sites and stuff, just what I would call just more normal Maya archaeology. And then the last like 7-8 years, I haven't gone to Belize very much. And the times I go, I'll go for like a week or something, because I'm at the point, what I'm working on right now is there's a ton of stuff in the lab. There's a ton of stuff to like analyze and write up and that kind of stuff. So I'm doing a lot of that actually. But getting new data, what happens is you work in the lab all year and you're like, shit, if we could just go up to the site for 3 days and get like these measurements, like, so that's what I've been doing like the last while. Like I'll go to Belize for a couple of days and then just go up to the site for a handful of days and get like the 4 measurements we missed. So that's the phase. But I can definitely see in a couple more years kind of going back to doing a bit more field work, and even the cenote thing too.
Working in the lab is kind of a very general term there, Andrew. They could pretty much cover anything. Can you tell us a bit more about what your version of working in the lab is?
In this case, on the Tuesdays when I go up to UCSB and work in the archaeology lab, in this case, it's very cliche, like we would think. Like I am sitting there with broken potsherds, bagging them. I'm sitting there with like old maps, trying to like, match them up. I'm sitting with old drawings that might be 20 years old from profiles and plan views, basically bringing all the excavations and the associated material together. That's a typical day in there.
I think we're coming a bit towards the end of this segment. Time's
Yeah.
running out. Is there any last things we should know about what you do, Andrew, in the last minute you have?
No, I think we've
count down.
I know. I think we've covered it really well. I think what to take from that is the cliche college professor's life is very varied. There's a lot going on. And I was honest. All that stuff we talked about was stuff that in the last week I've dealt with.
Wow. Yeah, I think, the more that we get in the longer your career is, the more you realize you're pulled in very, very different directions. So, well, with that, we're going to go on to segment 2 and hear a little bit about Doug's archaeology life. We'll be right back. Welcome back to CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 317. Today, we're talking about a day in the life of an archaeologist, or at least 3 archaeologists. And segment 2, we're going to talk about Doug's life. Doug, take it away.
All right, so this is actually an interesting time in my life to be doing this. So, in a way, I'm slightly in a career pivot's not the right word, but maybe like a career leap. So, various, I've been in archaeology on and off, getting close to 20 years, and various jobs. So sometimes that's been field teching, which is a very specific job, and that's all I've done. And other bits have been what you would call a portfolio career, where I'm pulling together various different jobs. And a lot of times with that, I've done a portfolio career where I'll usually have a job somewhere else and then a part-time job in archaeology. And then roughly about 2016, it was still a portfolio career, but it was almost all archaeology. And that lasted till recently, about a year and a half ago, when work dried up. And so then I had to go back to different fields. I'm still doing some archaeology stuff about one day a week, but doing an outside job. That outside job, not to speak ill of former employers, went a bit south. So I negotiated myself an exit. So I got 8 weeks paid. So I've actually been spending the last sort of couple of months a bit relaxed for the first time in 2 decades, and working a bit on projects I want to work on. And I guess you could sort of say at this point, I might actually be at the point in my career where, you start working in archaeology, you build those connections, you start doing projects with people, and then down the line, they remember you and they're like, oh, this and that. And so at the moment, I'm actually sort of building up a bit of portfolio. So I have a bit of work for the next couple of months. And then I've put in for grant funding for a fairly large project that would take me on through. So it's looking like at this moment, I'm probably going to be full-time pivoting over to one of my side archaeology jobs I've had for 14 years, 15 years, something like that. So you guys probably know that, I think I've mentioned it, film conferences, seminars, stuff like that, put it up on YouTube. So there's, I don't know, thousands upon thousands of conference presentations I've done over the years. They're up on the channel. 2017 to it became too big to just sort of do as sort of a hobby. And so that turned into a charity. And then I've been the director of the charity since then. And now it's looking like I'll probably be able to do full time as the director with various projects, working on things like that. So still doing some of that video stuff. No, I probably am getting the dates wrong. No, 2 weeks, not next week. I'll be going up north to do some mini videos for some museums. So there's going to be a conference in November, TAFAC, which is one I've done for, I think, coming up on a decade now. And they want to do a sort of video segment where it's 5-minute talks about artifacts with different museums around. So the TAFAC is Tayside and Fife, so it's different museums around Fife and Tayside. And for people not in Scotland, that's St. Andrews area, Dundee area, if you've heard of those towns or cities around there. And so a couple of weeks ago, I was up there Had some, actually it was really fun stuff. We're at Inverperry Library, which I did not even know existed until this project. And so got to go and, film some people, archaeologists, archivists, historians, talking about different artifacts at the moment. I'll be doing some more next week. Also, weirdly, a bunch of other video stuff. So near us is a cool project, which is the Wagonway 1722 project. So first railroad in Scotland. And actually, it wasn't originally a railroad. It was before you had steam power. They actually used it gravity. So it was for coal down from a port up from a coal mine. So it's 2 some miles. And I'm sure the Wagonway people are going to be cringing as I get all the facts wrong. But they're doing some excavations. They're a town just near me on the coast. They do stuff with the Wagonway and things like that. The sort of claim to fame for the Wagonway is, if people know, the Battle of Preston Pans, which people probably know from that TV show Outlander.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, people don't realize that, like, one of those battles with Bonnie Prince Charles was actually fought over a railroad track. It's one of those things that people just sort of forget. So be doing a video with them, going up to doing a project with rock art. We're going to show up a day and do some filming there.
So are you hired as like production? So let's say a museum, right? Says, okay, we need some videos here. We want somebody who's done this before to put together these videos, and for whatever our purposes. Is that what you're doing? And you're hired by these different entities to create these videos?
So a bit more complicated in that it's all over the place. So sometimes conferences, like, I would love to get paid, but usually, like, the bare minimum we do is like, hey, can you at least pay expenses? So a lot of it actually started out from conferences. Sometimes, people will come to us and be like, hey, we're going to put in a grant, or we have this money. How much is this going to cost? Which is super nice. So if you're thinking of any video work, definitely include that in your budget. It's always appreciated. Other times it's a bit like archaeological work. I look at websites for calls for tenders. So we just finishing up a project that more encompassing around heritage. So there's a place called Dumbreck Marsh, which is, again, no one's going to know it. Central Scotland, used to be old mining industry. 1990s, roughly beginning 1990s, they basically converted to a nature reserve, however you want to call it. And so part of that was actually quite a fun project. Worked with several other people that I've known. We pulled together a team, and so we did oral history workshops. So we talked to some of the old miners who were 70s or 80s, or people who lived in the town back then and when the mine and the industry was happening, it was 1960s. It was one of the last ones to close, but it was 1970s. So there's some collieries around there. So we did that. We had a bunch of activities. So we went to a bunch of the different schools, did things with the kids, handling, like, here's a miner's lamp, here's a chunk of coal. Hey, let's look at some old maps and look at what the place used to look like. Various, public engagement activities. And then we got an extension to that project. So we're actually doing a bunch of interpretation boards that are going to go up around the nature reserve. And we're making a digital trail, which will have additional stops and, video and some of the oral histories. So we've cut some of the audio and embedding that. And that's part of, if people want to look it up, we'll try to drop this in the show notes, the Mining Landscapes Eco Museum. So there's a whole website where you can go and you can take these little digital trails, and you can actually go out to the physical locations, and they've been put together by communities around Scotland where you can go and see old mining industry heritage and things like that. So that was a project that came in because I saw a tender for it. It was lottery funded, so they had to put it out to tender, and I ended up pulling together a team. We did a small video for it, but that was only part of the project. A lot more of the project was the oral histories and just general research about the area as well. So it's a bit mixed. Sorry, there's not a simple answer like Heather. I could just say, people just come to me. It's all over the place. It's like I'm looking for tenders on different government websites. Some of it's word of mouth. Some of it is doing, people I've recorded at a conference from like 10 years ago will just email me and be like, hey, so yeah, you do videos for a conference. Do you do X, Y, or Z? And that's how I end up doing those bits of work as well. So it's fun. It's not very stable. So sometimes there's a lot of work, sometimes there's not, but it's also very diverse. So again, next couple of weeks, I've done like a landscape public engagement project. I've gone to museums to record people. We're going to go out to the Wagon Way project, rock art project. And then a few weeks after that, I'll be in Norway for recording the aerial and remote sensing conference. So there's that. And then there's various other projects I do as well. So I end up doing a lot of web development or platform development for heritage organizations. So I have a couple of those projects happening at the moment. Historic Environment Scotland they've decided that they no longer want project-based websites. So they've been offloading a bunch of their old project websites. So I just picked up one, Scotland's Rock Art. And so that's projects that have ongoing where basically have converted. It was a proprietary format, proprietary programming, converted over to open source programming, and am now rebuilding their search map to look up all the rock art in Scotland, and then build a little bit of a search functionality and a form for people to hopefully add stuff to in the future as well. So there's a project about that.
Yeah, this isn't a question, I mean, kind of, as far as a day in the life, but for somebody who's based out of Scotland, is it a lot more public archaeology than it is private archaeology? What would you say?
No, absolutely not. Sort of like what you'd call CRM.
It is CRM.
95% of archaeology is that. And again, sort of that portfolio career, I still am the deputy CEO for FAME, Federation of Archaeological Managers and Employers, which is the equivalent of ACRA.
Okay.
So I am the staff. ACRA only has one staff. We have two, but essentially I do a ton of stuff on that, which again is very diverse, but it's about the business of doing archaeology. So I help run the health and safety committee or health and safety group. And so they put out like health and safety alerts on if someone has an accident or a near miss on a project, there's, a learning experience from that. Like, hey, be careful with cables. Even if they show up as not live, there could still potentially be an issue. So we put out health and safety alert. People also were doing guides as well. So some of the guides I do, some of the guides other members do, and then I just format them together. Various topics, how medication can affect, heat stress or cold intolerance, things like that. How to do near miss reporting, and then things on the business. So like HR, getting references and how you should do that. So I put out guidance, and that goes out to all the FAME members. So some of that's public. So health and safety stuff goes out to everyone. They're publicly available. More businessy based stuff like how to run a business, how to do your taxes, things like that as guides. Those are kept for members only. And I work with a provider that we have that puts that together. So professional HR people and the likes.
So first off, I just think this is great. You have your iron in so many fires, which is, I think, as we talk, more and more typical of what archaeology kind of truly is, day by day, week by week. My question is, in all this, at the end of the month, where do you make most of your money? Like, what's your, like the main, this is my main money stream. Like for when we're doing me, it's obvious. Like, I did a college professor thing. It's my main, money stream. But what's yours?
So that's a bit varied. So so I basically it comes out for the FAME stuff is 1 day a week, is roughly there. So that's a nice steady income. It's basically set up some months I do a little bit less work, some months I do a little bit more. I turn in timesheets to the organization, and then,
Right.
It all balances out. So the hours work out over a year's time, sort of thing. But I basically get paid that same set amount, which is nice when you are putting together a portfolio career, because, a lot of projects is like, you got something for 3 months, money comes in,
Yeah.
maybe you have a lot of money, and then, you're looking and maybe you need to put stuff aside.
Yeah.
And that's basically what it is. So at different moments, different projects are going to sustain me. So I've basically have it set up for the next couple of months
Gotcha.
where I have basically 2 projects I'm currently working on. This is the web development stuff I was talking about that basically will cover me for those 2 months. And while that's happening, I'm waiting for a bigger project that I've put in for to come through. And if that comes through, that will basically take me to almost full time. So about 4 days a week plus my 1 day of fame would be full time for over a year. So it's sort of like that. When you're doing that sort of, so it's not technically freelance because I'm doing it through a charity. And we do have another part-time employee as well, James. So but it's very similar. Like small organizations and freelancers are basically the same, and that you're putting together a string of projects and you're trying to make that work. And sometimes that is like holding back money for, putting the money aside when that 50% comes in of the project to last you a couple of months, and making sure you have a balanced budget. It's also rough because when you're that small, usually you can't sort of take out loans or you can, but you wouldn't want to. Sort of larger businesses can basically take out loans against projects at very reasonable, like, 1 or 2% or a small percentage, and it's only for a month or two. So at the end of it, ends up being a couple hundred, but you're able to keep payroll going and you're able to smooth out your work that way. Right. Whereas essentially we don't take out any loans. So a lot of it is that worry of just like, ooh, gotta make sure this project's on the horizon.
Right. No, sure.
And this is what I'm saying, though, is like, yeah, I'm kind of hitting that point where I've done enough work that I've built up enough relationships where now projects are rolling in fairly frequently, enough that, like, that's what I'm saying. It's almost like a career jump, as it were, where I'm now going to be able to sort of jump to being able to being the director of OpenPass, which is a charity, and basically do a series of projects to sort of keep going and do that as my work. Yeah. Which, again, is going to be all over the place. So as you heard from the last couple of projects, some of it's filming, some of it's public archaeology, some of it's like historical research, some of it is web development. So, it's not I do this one thing, I do it all the time, and that's exactly what I do, and that's what I'm known for.
Right.
That's not my day in the life. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
And if we do this in like a year's time, it'll be probably completely different projects and different things happening.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So, what's funny between both of us, I'm sure Heather will be the same at the next segment. It's like the importance of relationships and the importance of like connections over time. Again, sounds cliche, but it's like I've seen that to just be so true. So I guess we're at the 20-minute mark. So Heather, I'm guessing you take us out and then talk about yourself.
We'll be right back. My turn at being a narcissist. Goodbye. Welcome back to CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 317. And we're talking about a day in the life of an archaeologist, or a day of archaeology, or in archaeology. And this segment's my turn. So, boy, I was just writing down some notes. I do have lots of kind of outside interests, but I thought I would start with how I approach or how I see my job in archaeology. I do tend to probably overextend myself, both inside and outside work. But so with respect to work, I look at it as like different buckets, and I see it that way because I believe that if you don't look at it that way, you're not going to be able to really do your job, or at least for me personally, I'm not going to be able to do my job effectively. So my buckets are like managerial, and I'll go into like what I think each one does, because we're talking about a day or a week. It's probably also a bit more a month, but managerial, supervisory. My role as a supervisor for archaeologists within our company, just archaeology as it is. Sometimes there's so much extra, all the managerial and the supervising and the business development can all kind of, absolutely take up your day. And, and it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for the actual archaeology, right? And then practice building. So I started at the company that I'm at now about a year and a half ago, and was brought in to start the practice at this engineering and environmental firm. And that was considerably larger than the one that I came from. And so started that practice, and we've grown really quickly, which is very exciting and rewarding. And then lastly, as a manager or as somebody who's growing in the world of archaeology, you, just like Doug and Andrew were explaining, you do get pulled just by happenstance, get pulled into other areas of our discipline. And to me, that's what's super rewarding. I mean, each one of these are rewarding, some more than others, but the idea that I can contribute to our discipline, and these are like volunteer roles, but I really do enjoy that. To me, no matter what career I've ever had, that's always been the more rewarding area, is how I can contribute to whatever that discipline is. So to have a legacy, right? So from a managerial perspective, I think, anyone who's managing at any level will, I'm sure, attest to managing is the roles or the tasks that we have in archaeology. We have to be a business person, and there's so many elements every single day that go into that. You could just do those tasks and fill your 40 hours easily. And, that's just making sure that you're staying within budget, making sure that you're, interacting with the client, that you're being responsive, that you're setting up projects. Even the smallest of things takes time, and it takes a lot of time. So, and it's not necessarily the most fun part of the job, but it is necessary, especially when you're building a new practice. You have to justify that the practice is viable and it is going to be revenue generating. So, that's one thing that, I realized that when I was, starting in archaeology, I didn't really understand that aspect of it. And so for me, when interacting with people that are new in their career, people that are in our company that are new in their career, or maybe, 10 years into the career, but have not seen the managerial side, I try my best to have a lot of patience, because I think that people just don't realize the business side until you've actually done it yourself. So, I'll put in like a little plea to those that haven't had that managerial experience, to our listeners. Be patient with your managers. Understand there's a lot of things that they're dealing with that you don't even know about, that are impacting their decisions. And when I hear a lot about people complaining, I have to get through this really fast, and how can we do good archaeology if we're getting through it fast? And yes, of course, you have to make sure that you're budgeting, but sometimes we don't know. We don't know what we're going to encounter. The best way of mitigating the issues is making sure you have good proposals and good assumptions in those proposals. But, the manager is always looking at making sure we meet the budget. And it is a business after all. And so, of course, the manager has a responsibility to write the budget appropriately, to write the proposal appropriately. But, sometimes there's things that happen, and just understand that your manager is also dealing with clients and with their own managers and the powers that be at the company. And there's a lot of hats that they're wearing. So have some sympathy for them. Then the next role is supervisory. I take this very seriously. For me, my excitement in being in the role that I'm in is that I'm able to create careers for others and help people grow in their career, become professionals that eventually will be independent, more independent than they are now, and be able to carve out a role for them, eventually getting into the managerial side. And so for me, my role as a supervisor is probably the most important one at my job, and I thoroughly enjoy doing it. So, and having friends, I have, the team that I had at my previous job or previous company, we still talk on a daily basis. We have a group text, and we're still connected. So that's very satisfying to me because they're still friends. Some have actually followed me to my current company. And then you have the practice building, and that just takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of dreaming and strategy and being willing to face disappointments or, challenges along the way. But a lot of it is also learning the different regulatory side of things, which is crazy. In the last year and a half, we've grown from zero, basically, there was no cultural practice, to we're in 30 states now. And we just keep adding them. And that's very exciting. And we're growing very quickly. But at the same time, that takes being able to understand how you're going to work in each one of these. And not only how are you going to work in the state, there's a lot of states you have to be licensed in, and you have to make sure that you can have access to the records that you need, and that the SHPO will accept your report as a qualified archaeologist in that state. Some states are looser than others, but understanding the regulatory background, why are we doing archaeology? What are the questions we have to answer? Generally, they're the same, but you have to be able to speak for each state, and that takes some time. So, and then also looking at it and saying, okay, is this a state that we really want to pursue further? Is it something that is going to be viable as a good business decision? So that practice building and being able to have a consistent approach across the practice is also something that takes a lot of time, but I very much enjoy growing, creating things. So that's definitely my jam. I enjoy it. And then now let's actually talk about archaeology, actually doing the work. And, when you're growing a practice and you're giving people opportunities, you're hiring people that maybe are not very experienced, but really are anxious to get every opportunity that they can to have a career, long-term career in archaeology. And so, you end up doing a lot of the archaeology yourself, or at least teaching people how to do that archaeology and then reviewing it, making sure that we have a consistent approach. My approach to a practice is the same as it was to a team. Needs to be a consistency of approach, so that when a reviewer sees the name of the company and sees that report came from this company, that they know exactly what to expect, that it's not going to be all over the place depending on who wrote it, but that you're going to have a consistent approach, a consistent organization of the report. And to me, that's essential to making sure that the reviewers, agency reviewer, either state or federal, have some trust in the product. And that really goes a long way, because as I've learned, in my career, but especially this last year and a half, is that, you have to build trust in each one with each reviewer. And otherwise, you're getting even heightened scrutiny. And that's not favoritism. They don't know us yet. They don't know what kind of level of work that we do. And so that just means it's that much harder when you're going into each state. But I very much enjoy that. So, and then finally, my contribution outside of work, so volunteer work. In the past, I've done, a lot of just kind of seeing the need and jumping in and being involved. And then, I think everybody has this experience. I think anybody who gets involved outside of just work is, you decide, I'm going to just be, tangentially, I'm just going to be on the outside, enjoying this group, whatever association, and then you get pulled in real quick. Now you're on the board of directors. Now you're a president, and it just happens that way. Typically, I don't think I've ever had a position where I've actually gone for it. It's where somebody's asked, and that's just because they say, what do they say? 10% of the people do 90% of the work a lot with these volunteer programs. So I'm currently, obviously I have the podcast. We don't get paid for that. I have a passion project right now where some colleagues from academia and from CRM we're putting together a program or just some thought, kind of a think tank about how academia and CRM can work together for the betterment of our discipline. And that's especially relevant right now. There's a lot of changes for those that work in California. There's a lot of changes going on in California, and our job as archaeologists is definitely going to be different in the next 5 years, if not the next year. So being a part of that, making sure that archaeologists are involved in that change, so advocating for the discipline. And then speaking of positions, I was elected I'm president-elect of the Society for California Archaeology. So that is in and of itself a whole other role, lots of tasks there, just learning the job so that when I am president next year, that I'm not coming in really cold, but also being involved in advocating for the discipline of archaeology in a state role, with our legislatures, because there's a lot of legislation that it's being crafted right now that does involve archaeology. And so advocating for our discipline. And I also am on the board of directors for a genealogical society. So that's kind of a good example of, I just wanted to, connect with my dad, and he has a passion for genealogy. And so we started doing that together, and I ended up on the board next thing I knew. But I love that organization. It's actually my piece. So even though it adds more work, it's something I really enjoy. So that's about, I think that's about it. And every single one of those things that I just mentioned, I'm touching probably every day, I would say.
That's so funny. I think that's great for all three of us. None of us were like, so there I was at the archaeology site, just digging another one by one. You know what I mean? And I would say, in honesty, the three of us are actually very field oriented. All three of us have like a ton of field work. We are not like cliche academics who just talk archaeology theory. But it's funny, the stuff that's on our mind is not like how to string a one by one,
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's on my mind because I'm trying to teach, but for the most part, like I am in, like, I know I didn't talk about much about it, but like I'm still writing reports. I still go out in the field.
Me too.
I still do the archival research and the record searches. Right now, I do a lot of it myself because quite honestly, I work a lot of hours and I don't build them all. And when you're trying to build a practice, you can't do it on the backs of the client. So, but at the same time, trying to make sure that we're profitable as a practice. And so
of course,
a lot of the work that I do, like if I was to go and send somebody to North Carolina, because we don't have somebody specifically in North Carolina right now, we will soon. We have staff all around North Carolina, but currently in the process of hiring somebody. But it's, when I go to a new state and I do like some research, if I were to go and send somebody else on the staff, they would be they'd have to bill every single hour. Mm-hmm. They'd be billing out their time on their airplane. They'd be billing the time, driving around. They'd be billing everything. And I just, I can't afford that on our, it's not fair to charge that to our clients. So I don't, but I can do it because I don't bill for all the hours that I work. Mm-hmm. And so I think in the last year and a half, I've been so much more hands-on than I ever was at my other job. I was very hands-on there, but, I had actually started doing, that was a well-oiled machine by then. I had been there for many years. So it wasn't really necessary for me to do all that work. But it's actually been fun, and it's allowed me to now kind of get a a renewed sense of the everyday part of archaeology.
Right. Cool. I think we're good.
Yeah. So thanks all for listening to us talk about ourselves. And hopefully it's helpful, if not just interesting, but helpful to understand where, if you're interested in moving forward with your career, what that might look like from, and also what are all the different opportunities, because even though we all are saying very similar things, we all are touching a different aspect of archaeology, which I think is a great example. You know, what Doug does is very different. I've done a little bit of, like presentation, interpretive stuff and videos, but nothing like what Doug is doing. And maybe I taught a few classes, but nothing like, I don't know what the ins and outs of academia are. So I think it's good for those that are trying to conceptualize where they're going to carve out their spot in archaeology and what all the different opportunities are. So thanks all for listening, and we'll see you in the field. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
See you guys later.
That's it for another episode of the CRM Archaeology Podcast. Links to some of the items mentioned on the show are in the show notes for this podcast, which can be found at www.arcpodnet.com/CRMArcPodcast. Please comment and share anywhere you see the show. If you'd like us to answer a question on a future episode, email us. Use the contact form on the website, or just email chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Support the show and the network at arcpodnet.com/members. Get some swag and extra content while you're there. Send us show suggestions and interview suggestions. We want this to be a resource for field technicians everywhere, and we want to know what you want to know about. Thanks to everyone for joining me this week. Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in, and we'll see you in the field. Goodbye. The Archaeology Podcast Network is 10 years old this year. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy, our social media coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht, and our chief editor is Rachel Roden. The Archaeology Podcast Network was co-founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle in 2014 and is part of Cultural Media and DigTech LLC.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.arcpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Fall is all about cozy comforts, but when you're prioritizing your health, it's easy to feel like you're missing out. With Hero Bread, you can enjoy all your fall favorites because they're made with Hero Bread sliced bread loaves, tortillas, bagels, dinner rolls, and more. Try their all-new Hero Noodles with 12 grams of protein and just 80 calories. So skip replacing every carb with cauliflower and indulge in your breakfast, lunch, and dinner time favorites while still hitting your goals. From breakfast bagels and meal prepped enchiladas to mouth-watering burgers and cheesy noodles. You won't believe Hero Bread's options have 0 to 5 grams net carbs and are high fiber from the taste and texture. They've even got small batch drops of indulgent favorites like the popular Hero Croissant. And right now, Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code FALL25 at checkout. That's fall25 at hero.co. All figures are per serving of Hero Bread. Contains 2 to 18 grams of fat per serving. See the product nutrition panels on hero.co for more information.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with AutoQuote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.